I turned 18 at midnight, and by the time the sun came up, my family's entire plan to steal my inheritance was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. My name is Wren Castillo, and 3 days ago, my own father told me, after the party, "You're going to sign some papers for your uncle, just a formality." I smiled, nodded, walked upstairs, and signed something else entirely. Something that made every plan they'd been quietly building for 6 years completely worthless. But to understand why that one signature mattered so much, you need to go back 8 years to a lake house and a grandfather who saw all of this coming before I could even spell my own last name. If you want to see exactly how a 17-year-old outmaneuvered 3 adults using nothing but patience and one very good lawyer, stay until the end, because the final scene at that birthday party is something none of them saw coming, including me. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I read every single one. Now let's go back to the summer I turned 10. My grandfather, Desmond Castillo, used to drive me out to Lake Merrow in his old pickup truck, windows down, gravel road kicking up dust behind us. The cabin sat at the end of that road, wood siding gone silver with age, a porch that creaked in exactly the same spots every time. It smelled like cedar and coffee and something I could never quite place. That first summer, he handed me a hammer and said, "You're going to help me fix this railing." And he wasn't joking. We spent hours working side by side, him showing me how to test for rot, how to read the grain of the wood, how to know when something looked fine but wasn't. Inside, my grandmother Opal always had something cooking, and in the evenings we'd sit on the porch and watch the water turn orange, then purple, then black. One evening, fixing the dock, he said something I didn't understand at the time. "This place isn't going anywhere, Wren, no matter what anyone tells you later." I thought he was just being sentimental. He wasn't. That entire summer became a pattern. Every weekend, I learned something new about that cabin, where the pipes ran, which boards were original, how to start the old generator. My grandmother taught me to can vegetables and organize the pantry by season. What I didn't know was that my grandfather had already started meeting with an attorney, quietly, methodically, about exactly this property, about exactly me. Back home, things felt different. Our house was a normal 3-bedroom in a normal subdivision. My dad's name was Marcus, my mom's name was Priscilla, and my older brother Tate got the converted basement bedroom with its own bathroom because he was, in my parents' words, going through a lot at school. My room still had the previous owner's wallpaper. At dinner one night, my dad brought up the lake house. "That place is just sitting there costing us money in taxes," he said. "We should think about selling it eventually." My mom agreed immediately. I mentioned what Grandpa had said about it staying in the family. My dad laughed, not cruelly, but in that way that makes you feel small. "You were a kid, Wren. He was just talking." Nobody asked me anything else. The conversation moved to Tate's baseball season. Later, clearing the table, I noticed a real estate flyer half tucked under a stack of mail. "Lakefront properties wanted. Premium offers." A handwritten number scrawled in the margin. I didn't recognize the handwriting. I put it back exactly where I found it and went upstairs, thinking about my grandfather's kitchen table, the one he built himself, and how someone in my own house was already imagining that cabin as a number on a piece of paper. My grandfather passed away when I was 12. The funeral was small, quiet, gray skies. At the reception afterward, I noticed my dad and his brother, my uncle Desmond Jr., everyone called him DJ, standing near the food table, talking low, a folder tucked under DJ's arm. I caught one piece of the conversation. "We should get ahead of this before things get complicated with the estate." They were talking about the lake house, at a funeral. I said nothing. I was 12. I had no idea my grandfather had already prepared for this exact moment, years in advance. 3 years passed. I was 15 when my grandmother got sick. It happened fast, and by early summer, she was gone too. The last time I visited her in the hospital, she held my hand tightly and whispered, "The cabin is yours, Wren. Don't let them take it. Promise me." I promised. She closed her eyes, and that was the last real conversation we had. After her funeral, my dad sat at our kitchen table and said to my mom, "Well, now we can finally deal with the property." With this tone of relief, like a weight had lifted off him. That same night, I heard him on the phone in the garage with DJ, his voice lighter than I'd heard it in months. "Yeah, let's get this moving," he said. Standing in the hallway, I realized something that settled into my chest like a stone. My grandmother's death wasn't a loss to them. It was an opportunity. I didn't cry that night. I made a decision instead, even though I had no idea yet how I'd follow through on it. Between 15 and almost 18, that cabin became my secret project. Every other weekend, I'd drive out there in the beat-up sedan I bought with money from babysitting and a summer job at a smoothie shop. I patched the porch screens, fixed the leaky faucet, cleared leaves out of the gutters because Grandpa taught me that's where roof damage starts. Meanwhile, back home, the language around the cabin shifted. It stopped being Grandpa's place and became the family asset. DJ started showing up more, sometimes with a laptop open to real estate listings, sometimes with folders full of paperwork. Once, I asked about what Grandma wanted. My mom set down her fork carefully, the way she did when correcting Tate's homework, and said, "Your grandmother got confused near the end, sweetie. This is just business now." Business. That word started replacing every warm memory I had of that family. By the time I was 17, my dad started saying things like, "Once you turn 18, we'll handle this as a family." And I understood exactly what he meant by that. One afternoon, alone at the cabin, cleaning out a hallway closet, I found a sealed envelope tucked behind some old quilts. My name was written on the front in my grandmother's handwriting. Inside was a single business card. Eleanor Voss, attorney at law. And beneath her name, smaller print, Castillo Family Trust. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from understanding. My grandmother had hidden this here for me to find, knowing I'd be the one going through closets. Not my dad, not DJ, me. I slipped the card into my wallet and didn't call yet. 3 months before my 18th birthday, the attorney called me first. It was a Thursday evening, I was doing homework, and an unfamiliar number popped up. "Wren, this is Eleanor Voss. I represented your grandparents. I need to speak with you before your birthday. There isn't much time." She asked me to come to her office that Saturday, alone. Her office was small and quiet, smelling like coffee and old paper. She opened a folder and explained that my grandparents had set up an irrevocable trust 8 years earlier. The cabin, savings, investments, all of it, worth roughly $2.3 million. And I was the sole named beneficiary. The room seemed to tilt slightly. She explained that because everything was placed in the trust while they were alive, none of it would pass through the estate. None of it was subject to probate, and my dad and uncle had no legal claim whatsoever. She slid a summary across the desk, my name printed clearly on it. I asked why nobody told my dad. She paused and said, "Your grandfather's exact words to me were, 'My sons will try to sell that cabin before the funeral flowers wilt.'" Then she told me something else. Someone had recently been making inquiries at the county records office about the cabin's title. After that meeting, I started paying closer attention, quietly. The following Sunday, after DJ came over for dinner, he and my dad disappeared into the garage, door open just a crack. I heard DJ say, "I already have a buyer lined up, $470. We just need the title cleaned up before closing." My dad asked how. DJ said, "Quitclaim deed. We're the legal heirs. We transfer it to ourselves, record it, then sell. Nobody questions transfers between family." My dad asked, "Is that even legal?" DJ said, "It's standard paperwork. Totally normal." Then, quieter. "What about Wren?" DJ's answer came fast, like he'd already thought it through. "She's 17, she can't do anything. And by the time she's 18, the sale's already done. We'll give her a cut, maybe 60 grand for college. She'll get over it." I stepped back from that door with cold hands. DJ had already signed a purchase agreement, $470,000, for a property he didn't own, sitting inside a trust he didn't know existed. That night, I texted Eleanor 2 words. "They're moving." She replied within minutes. "I expected that. Come in Saturday, we'll prepare everything." At her office that Saturday, she laid out a timeline. The cabin's title was already held by the trust, so any quitclaim deed DJ tried to file should get rejected by the records office because a chain of title wouldn't match. But if he submitted extra paperwork, an affidavit of heirship, anything fabricated, he could create what's called a title cloud, something that wouldn't give him ownership but could tangle the property in litigation for over a year. So timing mattered enormously. The moment I turned 18, I could legally accept my role as successor beneficiary. Once signed, Eleanor would file a notice of pending action at the records office first thing the next morning, freezing the title completely. Nothing could be recorded against it after that. I asked if I should tell my parents. Eleanor took off her glasses and said, "Your grandfather asked me to protect you, not negotiate with them." I drove home and walked in on my dad in the kitchen, practically glowing. "Big news," he said, "throwing you a birthday party, the whole family. It's going to be a big one, 18 years old." I smiled back. My dad was planning my birthday party. My uncle was planning to sell my grandparents' lake house out from under me. And I sat at that table smiling, because in 6 days, I was going to let them believe everything was going exactly according to their plan. Honestly, sitting in my room that night, knowing what was coming, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Part of me wanted to just say it out loud. "Dad, I know everything." But Eleanor was right. If I tipped them off even slightly, they'd find another angle. So I stayed quiet and waited. Have you ever had to bite your tongue to protect yourself, even when it felt unbearable? Tell me below. I genuinely want to know, and if you haven't yet, subscribe now because this story is about to flip completely. 4 days before my birthday, my mom sat next to me on the couch, using her gentle, rehearsed voice. "Now that you're almost an adult," she said, "there are some family decisions we should make together." Together. The word felt hollow. She explained that the cabin cost money to maintain, taxes, insurance, repairs, and that selling it could help pay off some of my dad's business debt and set up college funds for both me and Tate. I mentioned Grandma's wishes again. My mom's expression flickered with irritation before smoothing over. "Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly near the end, sweetie, but property taxes don't care about sentiment." My dad walked in right on cue, like they'd rehearsed it. "Already got a buyer lined up," he said. "Great price, very fair." I asked who. He hesitated, said a development company. DJ knows them, very reputable. I said I'd think about it. He patted my shoulder. "That's my girl," and walked off looking satisfied. That night, my younger cousin who was staying with us, B, knocked on my door. She whispered that she'd overheard my parents talking late at night about the cabin, sounding excited but nervous, and asked if something was going on. I told her not to worry about it. 2 days before my birthday, DJ showed up unannounced, catching me in the driveway. Casual clothes, big smile, leaning against his car like it was a coincidence. "Got a minute, kiddo?" We sat on the porch steps. He told me the lake lot alone was worth $470,000, that he had a buyer ready, fast and clean, and that my cut would be $60,000 for college. I asked, 60 out of 470? He smiled like I'd said something charming. That's a lot of money for someone your age. Most kids would jump at that. I asked whose name was actually on the deed. His smile froze for just a second, a tiny crack. "Your grandparents," he said, "but they're gone now. It passes to your dad and me as next of kin." That's not how trusts work. He should have known that. He sells real estate for a living. But he was counting on me not knowing. I said I'd think about it. He left, already on the phone before he reached his car. That night, I texted Eleanor again. "They're moving faster." She replied, "Stay steady. 2 more days." 2 more days. I could survive 2 more days. The night before my birthday, I drove out to the cabin alone. The lake was still and dark under a thin moon, the pines black against the sky. I sat on the porch in Grandpa's old chair, the one nobody else ever sat in, and opened my email. Eleanor had sent everything: the acceptance of successor beneficiary form, the beneficiary confirmation, a summary of trust terms, all flagged and ready for signature at midnight. I read through it twice, then closed my laptop and just listened to the water. Grandpa used to say, "Patience isn't the absence of action, Wren. It's action waiting for its moment." I always thought he meant fishing. He didn't. The tears came quietly, no drama, just release. I cried because I wished things were different, because I wished my dad had taken me to this lake instead of pricing it, because I wished I didn't need a lawyer and a midnight signature to protect myself from the people who were supposed to protect me. But wishes don't hold up in court. Trust documents do. I wiped my face, locked up, and drove home. Set my alarm for 11:45. In a few hours, I'd be 18. In a few more, my family would discover that the cabin had never been theirs to take. At 11:50, my bedroom was dark and the house was silent. My parents had gone to bed an hour earlier. Tate's light had been off since 10. I opened a video call. Eleanor appeared in her home office, papers stacked under a desk lamp. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready," I said. "At midnight, you become a legal adult in every sense," she said. "Let's walk through this together." She guided me through signing the acceptance of successor beneficiary form, a single page that formally transferred control of the trust to me, with her as co-administrator. "First thing tomorrow, 8 a.m., I file the notice at the records office," she said. "Once that's recorded, nobody can sell, transfer, or encumber that title while it's active." I asked, what if they've already filed something? "Then it gets flagged immediately," she said. "The chain of title shows the trust, recorded 8 years ago. Anything else gets rejected on site." I looked down at the signed page, my name in ink beneath my grandparents' names. Eleanor's voice softened slightly. "This isn't a trick, Wren. This is your grandfather's gift to you. You just had to be old enough to claim it." The clock read 12:03. I was 18. I was now the legal beneficiary of the Castillo family irrevocable trust. Downstairs in a drawer somewhere, My uncle's quitclaim deed was already worthless paper. He just didn't know it yet, and he wouldn't find out for another 8 hours. Across town, in his apartment, DJ was finishing up the same quitclaim deed, a document transferring property rights, completely legitimate when the signer actually owns the property, and completely fraudulent when they don't. I learned all this later, piecing it together from what the county clerk told Eleanor and what my dad eventually admitted during a much harder conversation. DJ called my dad close to midnight. "Everything's set," he said. "We file at 9. Office opens at 8, but I want Wren distracted with birthday stuff first." My dad asked if he was sure. DJ said, "They're both gone. We're next of kin. It's straightforward." It wasn't straightforward. It was forgery wrapped in legal language. DJ also had a signed purchase agreement open on his laptop, $470,000, closing 30 days after the deed recorded, and if he couldn't deliver clean title in that window, he'd owe the buyer a penalty of $47,000 plus damages. He'd signed that agreement 2 months earlier, before anyone had actually verified the title, assuming it was simply part of the estate, assuming nobody had planned otherwise. He'd bet nearly $500,000 on paper that wasn't his. He just didn't know it yet. My birthday party started at 4 the next afternoon. The living room filled up, maybe 25 people, neighbors, my parents' friends, Tate's girlfriend's family, and an older woman named Marjorie who lived next to the cabin, sitting quietly near the window with sharp, observant eyes. Balloons, a banner, a cake from the bakery downtown. I smiled, opened gifts, thanked everyone. Folded in my jacket pocket was the signed acceptance form from the night before. I didn't need to touch it. It was already done. My dad stood up near the cake table and tapped his glass. "Everyone," he said, "Wren is officially an adult today. We're so proud of her, and as a family, we have some exciting plans coming up. Right, Wren?" Every face turned toward me. "Thanks, Dad," I said. Nothing else. He laughed it off after a beat and raised his glass, and conversation resumed. Across the room, DJ checked his phone, typing quickly. Marjorie caught my arm as I passed, leaning in close. "Your grandmother would want you to know," she said quietly. "I saw your uncle out at the cabin last week with 2 men in suits, walking the property line with a measuring tape, before he even had the title sorted out." After the cake was served, my dad stood again, louder this time, like he'd been waiting for the right moment. "Before we finish up tonight," he said, "I want to share something with everyone." He put his hand on my mom's shoulder. "Our family has had a tough year financially. Some of you know about the business struggles." Sympathetic nods around the room. "But my parents left us the lake house at Merrow, and as a family, we've decided it's time to sell it, to secure everyone's future." He looked directly at me. "Wren understands. This is what's best for everyone. Right, sweetheart?" The room waited. Every single person turned toward me. Neighbors who'd watched me grow up. Marjorie with her quiet eyes. Bee peeking around the doorway. My mom added, smiling, "This is what families do. We sacrifice for each other." I set my fork down on my plate, and the sound of it was the only thing in the room. "I never agreed to sell that cabin, Dad." His smile held, but his jaw tightened. "She's joking. Birthday jitters." "I'm not joking." DJ stepped forward from near the door. "Wren, come on, not the time for this." I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, set it down, and looked him directly in the eyes. "You're right, it's not the time. The time is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning." Silence settled over the room. DJ's phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't reach for it. Nobody moved. Within 30 minutes, the party had emptied out, Polite goodbyes, tight smiles, the kind of exit people make when they sense something is about to come apart. Once the door closed behind the last guest, my mom turned on me in the kitchen, her voice low but sharp. "Do you understand what your father is going through? He could lose this house, Wren, this house, and you're worried about a cabin you visit on weekends?" "I go every weekend, Mom. That's the point." She pressed her hands flat on the counter. "We're a family. Families decide things together, and if you actually cared about this family, you wouldn't need a lawyer telling you what to do." I went still. "How do you know about a lawyer?" She didn't blink. "DJ found a business card in your bag. Eleanor Voss. Who is she, Wren?" My stomach dropped, not from fear, but from realizing they'd been searching through my things, looking for ammunition. Before I could respond, Marjorie's voice came from the kitchen doorway, calm and unwavering. "That girl has every right to speak with an attorney, Priscilla. Opal would have wanted exactly that." My mom spun around. "This is a family matter, Marjorie. Please." Marjorie didn't move, looked at me, then back at my mom. "Opal was my friend for 30 years. I think I understood her wishes just fine." The silence after that could have shattered glass. I didn't say a single word. I didn't need to. Not yet. Marjorie left, and the last few guests slipped out quietly behind her. Now it was just the four of us, my dad, my mom, DJ, and me. My dad shut the kitchen door, the overhead light buzzing faintly. He pulled out a chair, sat down, and folded his hands like he was about to lay down terms. "Here's how this goes, Wren," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Tomorrow morning, DJ and I go file the paperwork. The cabin sells. You get a fair share, and we move forward as a family." "What's my share?" I asked. 60,000, he said. "Out of how much?" He didn't answer. DJ, leaning against the door frame, filled the silence instead. "Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be." I looked at my dad. "And if I say no?" His jaw tightened. "Then you're on your own. No help with college. Find somewhere else to live." I almost laughed because at that exact moment, 800 miles of legal paperwork already stood between them and that cabin, and they had absolutely no idea. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the folded acceptance form, set it gently on the kitchen table right in front of my dad. He stared at it, confused, then started reading. I watched the color drain slowly from his face, line by line. "What is this?" he asked, voice suddenly quieter. "That's me, accepting my role as successor beneficiary of the Castillo Family Irrevocable Trust, signed and notarized at 12:01 this morning, the second I turned 18. DJ snatched it from the table, eyes scanning fast. "This is fake," he said. "This has to be fake." "It's not fake," I said. "The cabin, the savings, the investments, Grandpa put all of it into a trust 8 years ago, before either of you ever started planning anything. None of it was ever part of the estate. None of it was ever yours to sell." My mom's voice came out thin. "That's not possible. We're the children. We're the heirs." "You're heirs to nothing," I said, "because there was nothing left to inherit. Grandpa made sure of that years ago. He knew exactly what you'd do, and he made sure it wouldn't matter." DJ's face had gone pale. "The quitclaim deed," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Won't go through," I said. "My lawyer files a notice with the county at 8 a.m., before either of you can even walk through the door. And if you try to file anything after that, it gets flagged immediately as conflicting with an 8-year-old trust record. You'd be filing fraudulent documents against a property you never owned, and there's already a paper trail proving you knew that." The kitchen was silent except for the buzzing light. My dad looked up at me, and for the first time since I could remember, he didn't look angry. He looked afraid. "Wren," he said slowly. What exactly did you sign? Everything, I said, and stood up from the table. I want you to understand something. I'm not doing this to hurt either of you. I'm doing this because Grandma asked me to protect what Grandpa built, and because for 6 years, every single conversation in this house about that cabin was about money, never once about her or him or what it actually meant. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Tomorrow, you can either go to that office and find out for yourselves, or I can have Eleanor send over the paperwork tonight, so you don't have to waste the trip. Either way, the cabin isn't being sold. Not now, not ever, not by either of you. I went up to my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed in the quiet. Downstairs, I could hear my parents' voices, low and frantic. DJ's chair scraping back, his footsteps toward the front door. My phone buzzed, a text from Eleanor. All set for tomorrow, 8 a.m. Congratulations, Wren. Your grandparents would be proud. I looked out my window at the dark sky, thinking about that porch at Lake Marrow, the creak of the second step, the smell of cedar and coffee. Grandpa always said the cabin wasn't going anywhere, no matter what anyone told me later. He was right. The next morning, DJ never went to the records office. There was nothing left to file. 3 weeks later, Eleanor and I drove out to the cabin together, and as we pulled up that gravel road, sunlight breaking through the pines just like it always had, she told me something my grandfather said the day he set up the trust. He told her, "My granddaughter is the only one who ever showed up for that place without being asked, so it's hers, whatever happens." I sat on the porch that evening, in his chair, and watched the lake turn orange, then purple, then quiet. For the first time in years, it actually felt like mine, because it always had been. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking with this story. And if it meant something to you, hit subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from.